Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth. And with us is our friend Scott Bennett to bring you the hard rock of truth.
Why, hello there. Come hither, boys and girls, and hear the magical tale of the magic monetary theory. That's right. You no longer have to worry about all that pesky gold and silver to buy what you want. Just print, print, print. And when Marco Polo traveled to ancient China in the 1200s, the Mongol Khans of China showed him their magic monetary theory, where they had pure fiat paper money, and they could just print whatever they needed for whatever they wanted to buy. But alas, even that story had a dark ending. For the magic monetary theory unleashed the twin beasts, the tidal wave of debt ridden by the beast of inflation. And when Marco Polo returned to China 20 years later, there were no Mongol Khans of China anymore. China had just gone through a vicious civil war that was sponsored by a total economic collapse. Let's fast forward 800 years. And the modern monetary theory is all the rage in the Western leadership. That's right, you no longer have to worry about debt. Debt no longer matters. No, just print, print, print all you need. But yet, the twin beasts are back. The tsunami of debt swallows up whole nations, causing defaults, causing collapses in currency, destroying people, destroying their lives. The beast of inflation swallows up your hard-earned wealth. The products that cost $126 back in 22 now cost well over $400 in 24. That's right, hyperinflation is here. What do you do to save your hard-earned wealth? Where do you go? You go to gold, not paper gold, physical gold. And you don't keep that gold in the United States, where in 1932 the government confiscated gold. It'll do it again. You don't keep it in Western Europe that's collapsing before our very eyes. Where do you go? What do? You come to exitstrategy.world, the company that's going to help you find the safe haven for your gold and your well-being. Exitstrategy.world, the saviors in this dark fairy tale.
So, Scott, first of all, welcome back.
Good to be with you, Stan.
Good to see you a free man. I hope that continues. And speaking of which, our buddy Scott Ritter looks like he's going to be facing uh, foreign agent charges because he worked for RT. Well, um, he got paid well as an expert by RT.
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous on its face because I remember originally, and there's other commentators that will support this as witnesses, when RT was originally named a foreign agent entity by Barack Obama during the period before Trump came into office, so between November 7th and January 20th. Barack Obama named RT a foreign entity, a foreign agency. He also closed down the Russian consulate in San Francisco and did a variety of weaponization against Russia. He essentially waged diplomatic war against Russia and I believe economic sanctions and such. And also, sent agents in to remove General Flynn with that whole scandal, and began
Hmm.
inventing the RussiaGate hoax with Hillary Clinton and all of their legal entities and Fusion GPS, and they really did a coordinated slow coup d'état against Trump, and they began the impeachment setup. And Trump really, I'll be it very bluntly, Trump was very stupid in so many different ways. He had stupid people around him, corrupt people around him as well, but he was very stupid and naive in how he handled this entire presidency. And for that reason, he really is a beta male when it comes to a presidential contender. It should be General or Colonel Doug McGregor as the presidential nominee, not Kennedy. You know, anybody who's been a Democrat and followed that whole thing, you've got a flaw in the very foundation of your identity when you go the Democrat route. I believe I've never been sympathetic to Democrats.
Same.
Republicans, yeah, for their failures, they're still more moral than Democrats. They don't seek to, steal from the rich and give to the poor and all that BS. So, and Trump was a Democrat too, I believe, earlier on, or he
He
was,
was. And a
he has
donor.
no he has no real moral roots. He doesn't have any real moral roots or moral character. So, there's a lot of truth to the descriptions of him. But when RT was designated a foreign entity, foreign agent organization, the RT people had went, well, we'll go ahead and call ourselves a foreign agent or a foreign entity because we're receiving money from the Russian government. Not that they're listening into Congress or they're doing Watergate or any of that spy operation, but we'll accept that. But our American commentators, what about them? They're not foreign agents. And the State Department and the U.S. government at the time said, don't worry about them. They will not be part of this. They will not be interpreted as foreign agents. They were American commentators. They were people like me or you or Mike Maloof or Larry Johnson or all sorts of others that would be asked to contribute their opinions on matters. They weren't performing espionage or clandestine operations. They were performing the same kind of work that other Americans do for CNN and BBC and any other foreign channel, Sky News, et cetera, et cetera. So in the very beginning, it was established that the American commentators would not be misinterpreted or misdefined as foreign agents. So if they're trying to do this to Scott Ritter now, they're breaking that original covenant and inventing this purely for political reasons. But we said this in the beginning. That's why you never speak with FBI or anyone else for 5 hours. That's just stupid because their agenda is to entrap you in something, like they did Flynn. He was an idiot for doing that too. So when you learn the hard way. I've learned it, but I'll never repeat it again. But if they try and charge Ritter, he really has to stand up and defend himself and defend the First Amendment and say, no, I am an American. I'm an American Marine Corps officer. I've been asked to contribute my time to write articles expressing my opinion, and that time is worth money. And I have to be compensated for my time in order to keep the lights on, the computer ribbons running, and the food going. So it's only reasonable that I be compensated for the amount of time expressing my opinion and giving it to RT, or else I'd be out in the farm, hoeing vegetables. So there's a logical, economic process here. And that really has to be differentiated, especially given the Julian Assange revelations that just came out, right? Julian Assange, God bless him. And that's another reason I'm really disenchanted with Trump on so many different levels when it
Oh yeah,
comes to
he could
principle.
have pardoned him.
He could have, and in fact, Judge Napolitano had spoken with Trump extensively about the process and about everything to do with pardons. And Trump said to Napolitano he was going to pardon Assange and Snowden. And then Mike Pompeo, allegedly, according to Napolitano, talked Trump out of it. Well, you know what, Stanislav? No one talks me out of doing something that I believe is moral and right, especially when he's nearing the end of his presidency. That was the one, and he should never have let this get off the ground in the first place. He should never have allowed Assange to be prosecuted and imprisoned and all of that stuff. Trump allowed it to happen. And it's a devastating indictment of his immorality, his stupidity, or his laziness, or his betrayal, or his willingness to say anything to get elected. It's almost like he's seriously got an Asperger's mental limit that's also inflated with ego and arrogance. And I would never go with Kamala Harris or a Democrat, but I also don't look at Trump as a knight on shining armor. He's just simply the better, the less of the two evils. And I personally think this country, the only way to fix this country is through a revolution, not through looking through cult like ideology of Trump. And never forget, he also screwed up the entire Ukraine situation
Oh
by
yeah,
giving
yeah.
weapons to Poroshenko.
First of all, I want to correct something. It's not pardon. He could have dropped charges because
True.
Assange was never tried.
That's right.
Assange spent 7 years in that Ecuadorian embassy, which is a prison basically.
Terrible.
He spent another what 3 years in prison, in high security prison in the UK, as they were debating extraditing him. So there were no charges in England against him. Illegal illegal imprisonment as a political prisoner. And I remember what you said about you had some pretty strong words for Ritter for what 32 boxes of evidence they took out.
Yeah, and they were only entitled to take out electronic materials. Instead,
Three
they went
things.
down into his basement and took all of his paper materials. And it's very easy to slip in a photograph of child porn or something
32
into something
boxes.
like, yeah. So, that's what happens when the first thing you do is you say you don't step out of your house and you don't give them permission. You say, gentlemen, give me your cards. My attorney will contact you. I don't recognize your jurisdiction. That's not a wet ink warrant. That's not signed by a competent judge. I'm calling the sheriff to have you removed. I want the sheriff here. And you put all of your, the sheriff, my rights are being violated. They're violating this warrant, and I want these men arrested for robbery. You have to ante up. You have to increase the stakes of the poker game. You do not play nice with these people. And Ritter played nice with them. And I said in the beginning, they're going to charge him with a Foreign Agent Act and say, take a plea. But part of the plea will be you never speak about anything of consequence again. You just go climb under a rock.
Yep.
And, maybe we'll put you in the witness protection program and send you out to, to Idaho or something like that. But you're never going to appear or go to Russia again and blah, 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 blah. That's how they do it. And it's a very sad and tragic thing, but we'll see how he handles it. We'll see how it goes. I think this is a lesson that everybody has to learn, that we're now at a point where the United States government is off the cliff, mad, in the final crumbling moments of empire. You know this well, and we are going to see a devastating implosion like the fall of Rome as the U.S. dollar collapses, because every country is going to dump it. Because the United States is going to get embroiled with a war against Iran, a war against Russia, and a war against China simultaneously. And as crazy as that sounds, they have to do that to implode the United States into the police state where these Democrat, Republican, rhino fascists can pretend they're part of the Hunger Games. And it's almost science fiction,
Yeah.
but that's what they think they can do. But they underestimate the American people. And Alex Jones is a good barometer for it. He gets extraordinarily passionate, more than Tucker and his little girlish giggle. But Alex Jones goes on the roar to say 1776 is the solution for 1984, and there are probably 3/4 of the American people that are ready to take up arms, to take up the attitude of someone who takes up arms, and defend their town, their county from any encroachments, especially given the invasions and stuff like that
Mhm.
that have come up and everything else. So I think we're about to experience major political trauma and revolution of the country. I don't believe it's going to be smooth or friendly or gentle at all, because the Democrats have lost their mind.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack right there. As a matter of fact, Ritter's already come out and said that he won't talk to anybody on the government's no-no list, the bad people list. I think I'm on that list because he stopped responding when
he
they did on
stopped.
my.
he stopped responding to me, and it's sad because I told him, I sent him a note saying I have some material that it will be very, very important and essential for your defense, and he never replied.
Yeah.
And it could have made all the difference of the world. But when you play defense, you're a loser. You
Yep.
always play offense. You always attack, and
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
stop, and you look right through them. And if you don't do that,
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then it's just a matter you give ground. I mean, the worst two words you could ever hear from the United States government, really the worst. It's not we're here to help you. No, no, no. It's trust us.
yeah,
At that
yeah.
point, either put your hands together or put a gun to your head because
Yeah, I just a quick story. I knew a guy that had a jewelry business that did some financial things, borrowed from one account to prop up another account and did some accounting things that weren't illegal, but it was just to manage the books and manage the cost of the business to get through a rough patch. And someone made a complaint about something, and the FBI, for whatever reason, came in and said, "Oh, well, and he started talking. Well, we did this just to do this and this to do this. Nothing criminal intended. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, tell us more. Tell us more. Tell us more.
yeah, tell us
And
more.
well, technically, that may be a problem. And then 6 months later, well, we're going to have to file something just because once we get called in, we have to get our pound of flesh. But don't
Right.
worry, trust us.
Yeah, true.
It'll only be a symbolic prosecution. Oh
Right.
wait, well, we got to get some time. But trust us, it's just going to be a hockey season,
Yeah.
6 months, and you'll be at home. Stanislaw, that guy I knew, turned in a 4 or 5 year federal prison stint. Lost his wife, lost his children. It's devastating. But the guys that I knew, because I was thrown in too by Obama, I never took a plea. That's the difference. You never take a plea. You fight adamantly. But I saw so many men go through the same thing. You either risk losing your arm or you let us chop off a finger and you keep your wife and your kids in your home. That's what the American government can. There's a book, Three Felonies a Day, that says Americans on the average commit 3 felonies a day that could be turned into, technically a charge.
Come on, when the tax codex is almost 1 million pages, everybody's a criminal just on tax law. And tax law is the law that the U.S. government loves to use most.
Yeah.
Did you listen to my interview with Chris Ems?
No, not yet.
Oh, you need to listen to him. And he's a British citizen, and he lays out what idiocy he went through with the FBI. He's in exile in Russia. He can't ever leave because of the FBI. Nothing he did illegally in England or when he went to North Korea. But the U.S. government decided it was illegal, even though he's not a citizen of the U.S. So
Yeah.
watch it. It's very interesting. It's mind-boggling actually.
Yeah.
The idiocy and what they will go through. And he decided to fight, and he
Yeah.
was lucky he was in the Middle East at the time.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk with you about in the Middle East is, you and I are both former Army officers, and I've been thinking, on a tactical battle plan strategy level, there's a lot going on, and I wanted to throw out some wargaming theories and stuff,
Hmm.
if that's okay,
Yeah,
because I
sure, sure.
thought, let's just lay out the risk board. Let's lay out the battle plan here. What would I do if I was, in Iran or, advising Iran or advising Russia or advising anyone? What would I do if I saw this Israeli juggernaut of murder and genocide backed by endless U.S. weapons and money and stuff? Well, one scenario is you have to get, I think, all of the weapons out of Afghanistan to be given to China because they're already on the ground in Afghanistan. China ships them out to Yemen or ships them to Iran or ships them to Lebanon or ships them somewhere. U.S. trucks, U.S. flags, deception operations. You get all of that equipment and utilize it for defensive purposes. You also, if the Israelis are going to do a counterstrike again against Iran, uh, and the U.S. is desperate to step in. And Ritter said this: the U.S. will go in and tell Iran, take the hit because otherwise we have to come in and this and that. So they're trying to convince Iran to take the hit and let it end there. Israel has to save face, Ritter said. Well, they may do that, or they may say, no, hell no, we don't have anything to do with you. We don't trust you. You're liars and everything and they lied to Boghossian, right? The president of Iran. He came out and said that. So, what Iran could do if they strike Iran back, and I've said this on Press TV and elsewhere, Iran could fire like 10 times as many missiles next time. But here's what I would target. I would target every bank in Israel, destroy the money, every gas station, every port, the airport, the civilian airports, not necessarily the infrastructure, but the runways. I would destroy the leisure, hospitality, leisure, restaurants, gay nightclubs, all that stuff. All of the things that make life in Israel civilized, sophisticated, cosmopolitan. Lay all that in ruins, break glass, devastate all of these areas without civilian life casualties necessarily, as well as military targets. And begin to coordinate these and set up a peace deal. I'll end it and say, on a diplomatic level, sign a non-confrontation agreement with Saudi Arabia and Iran, with China mediating, right? They've already made an agreement, but let's add a supplement to that, an addendum. In addition, we're not going to attack you and you're not going to attack us, so long as you don't allow U.S. planes and warships and all the other things to be launched from your territory against any Iranian forces or Lebanese or Palestinian forces. And do the same thing with Qatar, do the same thing with Kuwait, all these areas, to say a new dawn is upon us, BRICS is upon us. And Russia is perfectly poised to be, really the kingmaker of this whole political shift to the BRICS and Central Asia area. I don't think I've heard a better speech given at the United Nations than what Lavrov just gave. And Putin always gives good speeches, but Lavrov did a masterful prosecution of all the crimes that the West has done for the last 30 years. So, the diminishment of the UN is inevitable. The diminishment and the breakup of the EU and the EU countries is, I think, inevitable. And ultimately, that's going to leave in the cold the United States and Israel. And without the military, domination, without this, well, we're America in 1990. No, you're not. You're in 2024 with a bunch of fags and rainbow flags and queers and all sorts of other cricket eating, climate worshiping, hermaphrodite, androgynous, confused schizophrenics with fabulously overweight family members on every medication you can imagine, which is simply expressed in your violence and your hostility in foreign policy. You're not what you were 30 years ago or 100 years ago. So that reality has to be reminded with, an insulting, offensive truthfulness that we've seen far too much politeness from Russia, I think, in many of its foreign policy discussions, with the United States. So I think this has to be a pivot point on a variety of levels. And I'll end it there and pass it to you.
Well, play devil's advocate. First of all, as far as those 50 to 60,000 American servicemen that are within medium to short range ballistic missile range of Iran, I think it's pointless to negotiate with Saudi Arabia to control Americans there. I think the point is to negotiate with Saudi Arabia that when we hit it, don't do anything against us. We'll be friends, but that base, because the Saudis can tell the American admiral there or the American general, don't do it, and they're going to go screw yourself. We're America. We'll do whatever the hell we want. Nobody will touch us. Well, no, of course you'll get touched. You get touched really, really badly in very bad and painful spots. That aside, the Israelis, I think, okay, look, they hit a gas platform. No matter how much Israelis were denying it, you had the video offshore, gigantic fire. I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen a gas line burning when I lived in Houston. It was several kilometers away from me, and a column of fire that was going up about a kilometer into the air. I mean, you couldn't miss it, right?
Right.
Until they put it out. And you know what that looks like? And this is a giant platform on fire. And the Israelis, oh no, no, there's nothing there. No, ignore your eyes. They're all lying. Nothing hit. It all went away somewhere in La La Land, except for the one guy that really was that unfortunately standing
Yeah.
at the traffic light and get a friggin' rocket falling smack down on him. I mean, talk about God wants to talk to you, buddy.
Yeah.
Now, there's no questions. Now, boom. Um, no, I'm not laughing at guy's death, but geez, man, um
Yeah, that's like hitting, yeah, that's God sending, a message.
but
It's
if you hit the Israeli ports, you don't even have to hit the entertainment or anything else. Hit the Israeli ports and hit the gas or the oil lines. That's it. The country's surrounded, right? Its gas resources are offshore.
Yeah.
Oil imported by ship. Everything imported by ship. Raw resources are at a minimum. That right there, I mean, the Israeli economy is dead anyways.
Yeah.
It's flushed with American money. Oh, by the way, FEMA, if you haven't followed what happened in North Carolina, particularly, but I used to live in North Carolina half my life almost.
Yeah.
So second homeland is the South, the deep South.
Yeah.
FEMA's announced it's out of money.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, that's right. I read that with the what's his name? The Homeland Security guy talking about it too. They've
Mallorca.
given all the money to the migrant invasions that
Oh
they
yeah.
intend to bring over.
Oh,
And
they gave another 2.5 billion to Zelensky after the narco clown entertained Biden and got another 8 billion out of him. But if you're an American citizen, you will get $750 when you can prove damages, when your house has been taken off the mountainside there, and you've got
yes.
no internet, you've got no electricity, but you've got to prove that you lost that house and all the documents that went with it, and then we'll give you $750 and go
Yeah,
die off somewhere.
and then also if you live in Maui and your house mysteriously burned after being stopped from leaving from the Maui
Oh
police,
yeah, yeah.
and Biden seemingly admitted that there was some funny business when he said only houses with blue roofs didn't burn, and the stuttering, stammering,
I remember now.
ranger guy in the Congress says, well, yeah," and he was struggling for an answer, as if fires, start from the bottom, but then suddenly say, "Oh, we can't burn this house because it's got a blue roof on top of us." I mean,
It's the magic blue roof.
we're in a twilight zone, Alice in Wonderland. Stanislav, I seriously believe this, that our generation that was born in the late 60s, the 70s, and even to some degree the 80s, though I don't put any faith in anyone born after 1990, uh, we are the last real critical thinking generation that got dirty, that fought with BB guns and mud clods and stayed out and played and did everything that Huckleberry Finn kids would do. And
And
it
drank from
gave
the
us,
hose.
yeah, drank from the hose,
And didn't
you
die.
know, that generation, and didn't have all these medications and vaccines. I mean, I was born in Scotland. I didn't get any vaccines. And came back. My father was a Marine Corps fighter pilot, and my mother was Scottish. But I was born in Scotland, and thank God, because everything that I see happening in the United States, to kids and stuff, they're turning into these soy boy, castrated, confused schizophrenics. Their churches are contributing and amplifying this weakness, and I get so upset about it because the writing's on the wall. America will naturally melt like Frosty the Snowman in a hothouse as time goes by, because these immigrants, right, that have come up from the third world, who've lived on, eating tarantulas roasted over the fire with, cat for dessert, or
Eddie.
chewing on jungle leaves and lean and hungry. They're quite different to the over medicated, confused, multiple pronoun identifying, blue-haired, multiple piercing tattooed freaks that the military is stricken with now. So, I'm not being insulting. I'm simply being a psyop guy. I look at all of the barometric measures of the human being, and in the composite of the human being, what decisions and behaviors are going to emanate. It's like rotten meat. What kind of a flavor is this meat going to express? What kind of a scent is this meat going to express that's been sitting, that's been, rotting and given all these preservatives for 10 days in the heat under glass? I don't need to lift it up. I can guess. Versus, fresh meat, just cut off the cow, refrigerated, done today. Okay. And that's how I'm looking at the American public. What we've had done to us as a country for 30, 40 years versus what's happened to the other country. And Russia is, Russia and Iran. I've been to Russia. I've been to Iran. These are very healthy countries with healthy families and healthy religious principles and healthy moral identity and healthy nationalism. We don't have any nationalism. We don't have any culture in America. It's been stripped away. It's been outlawed, and it's been replaced with materialism. And materialism is like substituting popcorn for styrofoam.
Yeah, yeah. I will take I will take issue with one thing you said, but the tattoos, because some of the most hardcore psychopaths guys I knew in the military were tattooed up, and they would fight to the death for any reason.
Oh
But I
yeah,
know
yeah.
what you're saying about these little crazy ass gay tattoos that a lot of the youth have. That's like they're
Well,
not hardcore.
it's chicks too. Yeah,
Yeah.
military guys. Hell, if I was young and grungy again in my early 20s and stuff, I'd probably get a psyop or special forces tattoo. It's a mark of your love of country and manhood. It was a different time back then too.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
You know,
I knew a sergeant. He every time he had an argument with his wife, he'd tattoo a new skull, right? And from the look of his chest and arms and shoulders, like, damn, you've got a very interesting relationship with your wife. Rocking him, say mildly. It's starting to run out of room.
well, that's the camaraderie that we have, and I'll touch upon too. When I was in Russia, I was amazed at the warmth and the welcoming that I received from the Russian military and indeed everyone in Russia, the media, the political people I met, the religious people I met, but the military especially. I mean, and I went to Solidar and Godlovka and other places. But when I was in Solidar, and it's funny, and I raise this because John Kirby, what is it, the National Security Council spokesperson, that little twerpy
Admiral.
admiral, talk about a guy that just annoys the shit out of you because he's a pathological liar. But
Oh
when he
yeah.
starts spouting about Solidar, I instantly put up, the image from the film that we did in RT when I was in Solidar, and I said Solidar is everything because Solidar is a living exhibit of the viciousness, wickedness, death, and misery that the Ukrainians have inflicted on civilians living in Solidar. I saw with my own eyes, every single apartment complex was destroyed. And this is a
Yeah.
mining town, a salt
Yeah.
mining town. It's like Kentucky. It's like rural Pennsylvania, where the slag heaps and stuff are in America, or Detroit or places like that. And yet the entire city of Solidar or town, all of the buildings, all of the apartment complexes had been shattered and crumbled and had entire sides of them in piles of rubble. And there was only one woman living in Solidar. And it was not a huge, big place, maybe 5 miles by 5 miles. She was one woman who had lived there defiantly and refused to leave. And I went, we went in, and I was humping body armor, and we were running because there was all sorts of drones and explosions around, and we were with Spetsnaz guys. And again, I was treated like one of their own, and we went and met with this woman, and she described the Ukrainians tried to drive everybody off, and they did except her. But that's the indictment. What Solidar represents is not a pivotal strategic point. It's an indictment and a piece of evidence similar to that town that the Nazis destroyed with a concentration camp, and then all of the townsfolk had to come out and witness what the Nazis had done. Solidar is a living proof. Look at the rubble. Look at the dam. Look at the little children's playgrounds that are all shot up with bullet holes and bent and rotted, and the cars that are shot up. All of this happened in 2014, 2015, 2016. You know probably better than I do the exact timing of those assaults. But what they did to Solidar, the Ukrainians were told by the United States, due to all of Russia, break it up. And I hope and pray that Russia and its leadership are smart enough to say, we're going to prosecute this to the end. Donald Trump comes in, yeah, go take a back seat. We'll talk to you when we're ready. And we're going to be ready after we finish these bastards. And they go in and they decapitate all of the leadership. Zelensky, they want to grab Zelensky, eventually. They don't want to kill him. That was told to me too. Scott, we look better every day Zelensky's alive, to make him look, bad. And they never wanted to kill Ukrainians. They're Slavic natured cousins. But they're going to go in and finish this, I hope and pray. Do not make a deal with Trump. Do not give him any sort of political victory. It was his fault this whole thing started in the first place. And take Odessa. Make Odessa an independent republic like Donetsk, like Lugansk, like Crimea. Do not give anything to these Ukrainians, and certainly don't let the current parliament and Zelensky stand. They should go in with an Oliver Cromwell of Russian Ukrainian blood that overthrows the entire parliament, shuts it down, and runs it under a military dictatorship like MacArthur did Japan for a period of time, and then get everything equal. All the Russian people, you're over on this side, Odessa and wherever else you want to be. All the other Ukrainians, you can go on this side. You want to speak Ukraine? Fine. But there's not going to be any outlawing of the Russian language, and anyone that hurts a Russian citizen, life in prison or whatever it is. And the Nazi thugs, go back to France, go back to Britain, go back to Europe, or go up to this corner of Poland or wherever it is. But I also see the Ukrainian Nazis being used by the U.S. to cause all sorts of internal false flags and attacks upon Europe to make them more dependent on the United States. That's the betrayal that's coming.
I'll take it further. First of all, Ukrainians are Russians, very deluded Russians, degenerated, but they're still Russians. I'll tell you this. We need to take back our land. That's absolutely our land. That's Kharkov, Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, Nikopol, Odessa. What's left after that? And I'd say, really, honestly, and Kyiv also.
Yes.
Absolutely, and Kyiv. And after that, let the Poles have a chunk. Let the Hungarians have their chunk. Let the Slovaks have their chunk. Let the Moldovans or Romanians have their chunk. So I'll tell you, the Poles, I don't have that much against Poles themselves, but the government they have and the people that follow them are Nazis. Dudu is a fanatic.
Yeah.
But he and those Ukrainian Nazis despise each other.
Yes.
Let them chew each other up for the next 20, 30 years.
Good point. Yep.
And we'll all live peacefully.
You heard that with the Polish minister who was pranked. The pranksters got him, and he admitted essentially to the Nord Stream pipeline. And of course, he admitted it in the tweet about the Nord Stream pipeline. So yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. Let them grind each other up.
Pompeo got pranked, and it's always the same. They're calling as Poroshenko. But Poroshenko calls everybody, and everybody wants to talk to Poroshenko. I mean, Pompeo, head of the CIA, got pranked.
Yeah. That's exactly. Well, I don't think there's anybody more despicable than Mike Pompeo.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I sent him my report Shell Game, which detailed exhaustively the criminal terrorist financing that was being performed by Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation when she was at the State Department, and Barack Obama, and implication Joe Biden, and Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer and the law firm Covington and Burling, and a whole host of Zionists that were associated with Covington and Burling, Michael Chertoff, Dov Zakheim, a variety of other people. That was the same law firm that snuggled up to Michael Flynn. I reported that to Flynn, his brother, and Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell wrote a brief. I wrote an amicus brief. The next thing you know, they dropped all charges because they didn't want that coming out. They didn't want to see the incestuous relationship between the Department of Justice and Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer and Covington and Burling, because Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer, the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General, returned to Covington and Burling as part of this whole revolving merry-go-round of corruption. There's a lot of material that God has put me at the center of the spoke of this wheel in so many different ways. Probably one of the reasons they don't, mess around with me, and I'll use that word politely because I don't want to get your YouTube channel in trouble. But there's a lot of death and corruption that these people have done that need to be. And I sent it to Trump too in 2017. In December of 2017, I sent him a report, and he did nothing, and his people did nothing. So I don't have a lot of moral faith in Trump when it comes to this. I think he's a coward at heart, and this whole cult-like in his ear. I think that's all cheerleading for the half-wit lowbrow that are looking for a.
Yeah, I was trying. Sorry, Scott. I was trying to tell you we're about to get cut off on the timer. So we're back. Yeah. And by the way, so Ukraine used the HIMARS platform. Well, Ukraine used the HIMARS platform to fire missiles at the Kursk nuclear power plant. And you're got one of two things here that could happen. Now, more likely, the cooling towers you're not going to damage, or not too strongly, because they're built to take a Boeing 747 smacking into them, as opposed to say the twin towers. So you could hit the nuclear containment facility for spent fuel, and then you get a local contamination because you basically just blew up a big dirty bomb. But that's not that bad, all things considered. You could hit the containment system, the coolant system, and then you could have a nuclear meltdown. And then you got another Chernobyl or worse, Fukushima, going off. So Kursk is dead for a while. Northern Ukraine's dead, and all that rest of that is going to go straight northwest to Scotland and everything in between. And the European subhuman waste of sperm that are calling themselves the leaders of the black mass of ignorance that is most of Europe are going to get a nice radiation dose all up and down northern Europe, starting with Poland and going straight to Germany, Denmark that keeps screaming for war, and all the other little midget morons are going to get themselves and their people nice and contaminated, just like 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, actually, almost now. And the U.S. government just did this.
The U.S. government just did this. The U.S. government intends to continue doing this. The U.S. government is doing this to actually, eventually, inevitably cause a radioactive implosion, an event at Zaporozhye, or manifest an artificially induced one, whether it's by dirty bombs set by cars or dropped from planes or whatever the delivery system. They are going to target to destroy the Zaporozhye plant, to create, because this is out of their delusional mind, to create another Nord Stream pipeline. The Russians did it. The Russians blew up their own pipeline. Well, the Russians blew up their own nuclear plant. We sold that lie to the American people, so we can sell this one. You sold nothing to the American people. Everyone knows that you're liars now, except yourself, because you're delusional. But they're going to do that. They're going to try and blow this up and blame it on the Russians. They will benefit from blaming it on the Russians in their minds to weaken Europe, weaken Germany, welcome, strengthen NATO, strengthen the U.S. troops. Oh, guess what? We'll send all of our third world immigrants into uniform and deploy them to be peacekeepers in these European nations that are struggling as a result of this nuclear fiasco. And it will solidify them into subservience to further NATO expansionism. We'll have American bases on every 5 miles of every European country. And we'll bring the Ukrainians up, and we'll launch asymmetric war against Russia from all of these different points. So this action in the warped psychopath mind has the one side of the coin because they're incapable of seeing both sides of the coin. It's like the Israelis. They see one side of the coin. That one side is chaos, catastrophe, will serve our interests politically and economically and militarily, and Russia will just take it because they're too dumb. They're not sophisticated. They don't have gay rights and rainbow flags and transgender surgeries. They're just subhumans. So we are the world's leaders, and everyone will believe us. So I do believe, sadly, they are going to target and try and destroy this Zaporizhzhia. I've said it for years.
Well, Kursk
Now,
too.
Russia needs to step in, and I think, and you could explain it probably better than I can. I've tried to clumsily, but the enhanced, redefined Russian nuclear doctrine, in light of this attack and this strategy, is significant and really a defensive plan by Russia to secure that plan so that it can't be the pivotal event or the plate tectonic event that the U.S. is going to try and trigger to split off Europe into further enslavement to the U.S. Where in fact the plate tectonic event would result in the complete crumbling of all of European society, and as you said, the radioactive toxicity, and I mean it would just be the worst thing you could imagine. But how could you define? What would you say the Russian changed, enhanced nuclear doctrine? Plus this scenario and need to counter it. How does this synthesize? How do you define this and explain it?
Well, technically by this plan, because by the way, this time it was the Kursk nuclear power plant that was hit by HIMARS missiles. So this is old Russia, even though Zaporozhye still is old Russia. It's returned. By the new definition, well, if you take the fact, but they avoid this fact, unfortunately, that those HIMAR platforms are manned by Americans, and all the HIMAR missiles are, that doesn't, not just the ATACMS, are guided in by American satellites. But they avoid that because they're just literally just writing that the ATACMS are. If you go down that line, Russia has the right to nuke the U.S. at this point. Because what the policy says is even if it's a non-nuclear country that's attacking Russian key strategic infrastructure, nuclear infrastructure, not just nuclear missiles, but nuclear power plants, and they are backed and sponsored or proxied by a nuclear power, it'll be considered a war by a nuclear, it'll be considered an attack by a nuclear power onto Russia. It should be responded with nuclear weapons. So technically speaking, New York could be a crater right now, and Washington, which I think most of humanity would be very thrilled if Washington was a crater.
I agree.
Telling the truth, I think most of humanity would be go, whoo. Even most of America's vassals would be go, whoo.
They would.
Not their leadership, not their owners, but the average peasant whose life is not getting better thanks to Pax Americana. And in fact, most Americans lives aren't getting better thanks to Pax Americana, except for like 1% of half a percent of the population that's mostly sponsored in New York and Washington. So yeah, so that technically they could. We'll see what the response is going to be at this point. You know, in my opinion, about the only way we're going to save this world, and I've said this a long time ago, like it or not, there's going to have to be made an example of what a nuclear strike is. There's a city called Lvov, which has become the city, which was a Russian city built by a Russian czar. But uh, at this point, I think the sooner than later, there has to be an example made for the world to see what a nuclear weapon is. And you may have to come to the decision point where you sacrifice a couple 100,000 in a city like that to save 3, 4, 5 billion, because
Yes.
the West is ignorant. It's run by very ignorant, demonic people. It has absolutely no concept of what it's screwing with.
Mhm.
Um, I'll just do one example, just a single one example. I mean, you may have seen that article. It was in the Washington Post maybe about 10 years ago, where
Mhm.
you don't have to fear a nuclear war. Sure, if you're in the middle of a city, you get vaporized, but don't worry, you die right off the bat. Everybody
Yeah.
else just hunkered down, and 24 hours, radiation goes down, and then you get out to go out, walk, have a walk, breathe the fresh air, and leave the ruins. See, it's all fun. No, nothing major.
Yeah, I think Russia is very smart diplomatically, and it recognizes it wants to continue the solidarity with India and China as economic partners to and political partners as the key counterweight to the West and to the other parts of Asia. And now it has the Muslim world on its side. So it has to maintain the delicate, it's like balancing a tray full of champagne glasses. And these people, by temperament, the Indians, right? I don't have a lot of faith in India or Indian people. I known a lot of them, and they're very fickle in a lot of ways. They're not, Western cold-blooded, cold-natured people. So Russia's got to kind of keep them stroked like cats, and it's restrained itself for diplomatic balance, and it's paid off, I think, in the long run because it's allowed the maturation, the evolution of the Indian and Chinese mind more through osmosis into a Russian cold weather, pseudo Western viewpoint or tint of understanding and looking at foreign affairs. Chinese are Chinese, right? They're two-dimensional robots in a sense. They don't see anything beyond a certain level. And Indians are kind of the same way. They're prideful, worshiping the multiple arms, blue monkey gods, and all that other stuff. There's a lot of weirdness in these cultures, but Russia has to keep them on their side. Who's my enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the diplomatic side, and now with the Muslim nations and the outrage of Israel, is Marandi, the Iranian Tehran professor, had said, you couldn't pay billions of dollars in public relations and strategic communications. You couldn't pay for the implosion of the Israeli reputation as Israel has done to itself.
Absolutely.
So all of that is on Russia's side. That's a big pot of political capital, and therefore it hasn't prosecuted and executed the military component of this war in a certain way, and it also hasn't disrupted Europe to fall into the trap that the West and America has tried to say through its puppets Macron and Schultz. Oh, they'll be coming after us. Russia is the greatest enemy of France. That just came out from some foreign minister or some prime minister or someone in France, who's they're also saying they're not going to tax all the French people and the French companies huge amounts of money to continue paying for this war, which I'm hoping will lead to a French Revolution Part Two. And Germany will have to do the same thing. It's a bankrupt. But now that Russia has a big pot of political capital, now it really can, as you say, exercise for the defense of humanity these nuclear options and tactical nuclear weapons fired from artillery shells. And Russia is very good. I'm sure they have better weapons than anybody imagines. uh, can eliminate city blocks, not entire cities, but city blocks. So yeah, you identify the city blocks that are not Russian, that are territory of Ukraine, and you annihilate, pulverize every one of these city blocks in a methodical way and essentially you follow the Israeli model and just annihilate, carpet hit this a whole region, and you do a public relations campaign, but I think the tactical weaponry is needed. And the other thing is the Ukraine as the Israeli assault continues against Lebanon, against Syria, against Iraq, against Palestine, and Jordan is overthrown. The king of Jordan is gonna be overthrown. I think in a matter of months. I think he's going to flee like the Shah of Iran. Egypt may learn from that lesson and open the borders and get much more confrontational with Israel. Uh, um, but as this Israeli madness amplifies, the U.S. is going to have to focus its efforts into this war, and that's where Russia steps in and makes this the second Vietnam. You want to go into a fight with Israel against all these countries? Welcome to your next Vietnam. And let's start off with Russian nuclear torpedoes that will strike every ship, or Yemen missiles fired, or Russian anti-aircraft S-500 missile systems in Iran, to annihilate every single C-17 that tries to land supplies into Israel, and every boat off the Mediterranean and elsewhere sunk. Now is the time to. It's like playing Battleship. Take out as many of these military vehicles as possible, because they're not going to be replenished. They don't have the factories. They don't have the time. They don't have the money. And you also coordinate a drop of the US dollar at the BRICS summit. So I'll put it to you too on another level. What do you think is the best thing that should be said at the BRICS upcoming meeting? What sort of mission statement or topic or language or uh, you know agreements should be established at this BRICS opportunity that solidifies people into and countries into a stronger cohesion?
Well, as far as first of all, let's before I go to BRICS, um, there's no need for nuclear weapons. By the way, Russia's tactical nuclear weapons, at least it was mentioned, is 75 kilotons, which is twice as what was dropped on Nagasaki. That's not it's called a tactical, but it's really an operational level.
Mm-hmm.
It's theater level nuclear weapon. I mean, that'll take a city out, especially a compact city out, pretty damn well. On its own, I mean, look at Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and again, this is twice as big. Um, we've got vacuum bombs, fuel-air bombs that will take out a city block very, very easily. Non-nuclear, non-nuclear. There's great image of a 1,500. So it's 900 kilos of explosive, and it's a fuel-air bomb. So just and if you happen to be in an enclosed area as a Ukrainian uh, as a Ukrainian soldier or as a Ukrainian Nazi, you'll have your lungs pulled out from your nose and your mouth because the vacuum that creates sucks everything out. So it works really well if it's sucking it out of a enclosed space, a trench to a degree, a building, a bunker. Yeah, not a pleasant way. Probably yeah, it busts everything in the brain too. So that's one thing. Aircraft carriers, you don't need nuclear torpedoes with an aircraft carrier. You don't need to sink an aircraft carrier. All you gotta do is damage the runway enough. They can't, you damage a runway on an airfield. They bring a tractor, they dump dirt in there, they put a quick batch of asphalt over it, fixed. Yeah, it could be it might take a few days because it's a big friggin' you bust a hole in an aircraft carrier's steel runway. Yeah, that's going back to port because there's nothing more that thing can do. It can't take flights. It can't have flights leave. It's done, and that alone is enough to take out. U.S. Aircraft carriers, and those
And
aircraft carriers.
let me add, you just need to damage a wing, one wing on an aircraft,
Oh yeah,
and it's not flight worthy. It's going
yeah.
back to port two. Very fragile air systems.
Oh, absolutely. And you're dealing with if you're dealing with a Zircon, Zircons can be fired from 150 kilometers out, 200 kilometers out from a submarine. They're Mach 8 maneuverable missiles. There's no system hypersonics from the hypersonics, so they're maneuverable missiles. They are slow when they're just taking off, but that's like the first 10, 15 seconds. And after that, they're speeding up to Mach 8. Um, and there's absolutely nothing in the U.S. Navy that can stop that. Plus, if it was just a ballistic formula, you could run a formula and try to shoot intercept or something, but it's a maneuverable guided missile. So your ballistic formulas go right out the window as soon as it starts taking evasive action at Mach 8, and it's also at that speed creating a plasma shield around it, which just adds an actual layer of defense. Because it's a plasma bubble that forms when you're flying that fast through
Yeah,
air and not melting, because of the Russian subhuman bears created nano carbon nanotubulars that keep it from overheating and melting. Uh, so yeah, aircraft carriers are great for beating up third world, maybe second world countries on a peer-on-peer competition. Yeah. On a peer-on-peer competition with hypersonic missiles. For people that don't do the math, if it launches at 200 kilometers out, and there's no way in hell you're going to find a submarine 200 kilometers away trying to search for it. I mean, it's a gigantic piece of territory to search. It pops up, launches that missile. You've got about 2 minutes. That's it. You got about 2 minutes, maybe less than that.
hmm hmm yeah. It's. I agree with you 100%. You just have to damage the platform, not destroy it, but damage it, and those they can't perform their mission.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. They don't have
Now,
missile launchers. They don't have anything else. Their mission is to launch airplanes.
well, the other thing is too, this war is not going to be won by Israeli air power. It's going to be won by individual guerrilla fighters with 50 caliber and other weapons snipering in asymmetric ways every Israeli tank and vehicle and personnel
Yeah.
that comes
Yeah.
into Lebanon. And they will annihilate, and they should annihilate every single house that is, the settlers are going back there. No, leave a pile of rubble. They won't go back there. Just blow a hole in the roof. They won't go back there.
Well,
Uh,
I got nothing against Israel existing. I've got issues against the way Israel has existed with the Gaza Strip and the Palestinians.
right, right.
Those northern
Because they haven't
settlements,
honored their word. That's
right?
the thing. No, Hezbollah and the Palestinians, everybody would say, fine, we're not looking to exterminate the Jews. All that's lies from the Zionists. We want to live in peace, but the condition of peace is you don't attack us, and we have our own state, and that's it. And Israel
Yeah.
has said, no, 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 we want everything, and we're going to kill everybody, and you either allow us to kill you or you're a terrorist. Well, sorry, that doesn't work in the world of humanity, and it's taken what 70 years for this to manifest. We are at the pinnacle, the point, the highest point of the Sisyphus, push up
Yeah.
to see the true nature of the Israeli Zionist, demonically possessed, Talmudic, multiple gendered, atheistic minded, Israeli leadership by what they've done in the last year.
But don't forget, and most people don't know this. Christian Zionism created Jewish Zionism, and
Yes.
Christian Zionism that wants the end of the world because we're going to force God's hand, and we're going to do Armageddon, and we're going to get that false doctrine of rapture,
Yeah.
which was, as in Russian they say, sucked out of a finger back in
Yeah.
1833 by Scott Charles Darby, I think was the name of
Yeah. Yeah. I think
the
you're
preacher.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Who left the UK and went into the US, and you know, uh So
that's let me forgive me for interrupting.
no, no,
That's
no.
the most disgusting thing that I see in the United States are these people that I find agreement with on much of the social policy parameters, including Shapiro when it comes to homosexuality and gay marriage. I
Hmm.
I agree with him because he's on
Oh
my
yeah.
side. I'm not on his. I'm on my side, and I'm on God's side. Charlie Kirk, all of these people, even Dennis Prager, when it comes to the family and the purity of the human body and nature and anti-abortion this and all this, we find tremendous agreement. But then they transform from the human being into the werewolf by the full moon of Zionism, and they go off their rocker with, well, we've got to bless Israel because God says, bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. And it's like, whoa, now you've gone into the perverted, delusional world of lies. You're looking in the carnival mirror and seeing a distortion of reality. And Dinesh D'Souza, who I've found agreement with, and has did the Trump film, 2000 Mules and all this. His remark on the pager cell phone walkie-talkie explosion terrorist act that Israeli did was complete praise, joy, praise. Dinesh D'Souza, and it's just it just shatters my mind
Oh
and
yeah.
disgusts
Yeah.
me. But it's I on
Yeah.
another note, I perceive they're going to do that same attack on the United States. I
Sooner
think
or
they're going
later.
to put up pagers and
Yeah.
cell phones in the United States.
Absolutely. Sooner or later. Yeah. You've let the genie out of the box or the
Yes.
bottle.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm gonna put on my Orthodox hat.
Mhm.
Um, the problem with most Protestants is it's a faith built by a man over 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago. The church as a whole, this including the Catholics, because the church was unified, and the ecumenical councils acknowledged that Jerusalem post Christ is not a physical place. The Jerusalem that they're talking about that is the heavenly kingdom, right? So when the Protestants go, well, the evangelicals in this case go, oh, we have to because God said we have to defend Jerusalem. Wrong Jerusalem, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a Jerusalem of physical buildings. It's a spiritual Jerusalem. That's what the church from day one has accepted. And
Yeah.
without that knowledge, and they're just read the Bible, not understand half of what's written in there, and now I'm going to make a new faith based on that, and then
Yeah.
you get this kind of idiocy.
Yes. Yes.
You can't have a chosen people that is above God who sacrificed God when God said, "Hey, there." You remember you remember the parable about the wine yard,
Yes.
the grape yard,
Yeah.
and the master left. He put people in charge of the grape fields. He sent his people to collect the thief, and they beat them and they killed them. And then he finally sent his son, and they said, "Oh, he's the inheritor. If we really kill him, we'll get it all." And
Yeah.
I mean, that's as straightforward as you could say without naming names,
Yeah.
who's who. And all of that seems to get ignored. And to put the chosen people, again, I got nothing against Jews. My father's officially Jewish by blood.
Right.
He was mixed, but
Right.
that's
Right.
beside the point. Um, but the point being is, as an Orthodox Christian,
Yeah.
that to Jerusalem is there, not what's
Yeah.
on the ground.
Well,
So the only,
that's the beauty of orthodoxy. It
yeah,
incorporates history and the lessons of history
yeah,
that guides us on the straight path. That you Protestantism has decayed over the last 100 years.
yeah, yeah,
Even more a little bit. But orthodoxy, it's orthodox.
yeah,
You have
yeah.
the solid stepping stones of faith that are not changing, and the rigor and the traditionalism of orthodoxy doesn't have the contaminants that Catholicism has.
Yeah.
I know that. I went to Catholic University. I did my PhD there. I went through the whole Catholic JC, or RCIA and all that. I studied it ad nauseum. Catholicism incorporates a lot of things that are not in the Bible, where Orthodoxy, does not. And Protestantism, the only real big pollutant, has been in the Christian Zionism, and
Oh,
now
yeah, yeah.
compromise, right? The tolerance of, well, let's just get along with the culture. No, you are to be the salt in the culture.
Right, right. And Catholicism, I mean, it's a heresy for us Orthodox, the papal heresy, because the Patriarch of Rome decided he wasn't going to be first among equals, he's just going to be first. So that didn't work
Yes.
too well
Yes.
in the long run of things. But Catholicism, I think, really, really went off the rails with Vatican II.
Yeah.
Because let's be like the Protestants to get more people. Well, it's the same thing as Target. Who is your target audience in the Target? For
Yeah.
Target. Oh, it's or Budweiser, Bud Light. Who's your target audience? Oh, it's pretty conservative, family-oriented people. Oh, let's do
Mhm.
everything gay and transgender. Oh, that'll work. It's the same thing Vatican II. Oh, who's your target audience? Hardcore Catholics. Oh, let's be like the Baptists. And no wonder why the Catholics are leaving. It's like,
Yeah.
we're not Baptists, but we're like the Baptists. So the people that don't want to be Baptists are going to leave because you've pushed them out. It's the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
you
That's why they're
totally
inclining and
off the rail.
attracting, they're being attracted to orthodoxy because it still has the nuggets of pure theosophical principle and morality that is unchanging, that is energized by God's word. It is
Oh
not,
yeah.
it's not dissipating, and that those are things that the West has lost, and it's made illegal.
Oh yeah.
But
It's
I
very
want,
sad. It's very sad, but this is a buildup. This isn't just something that happened at once. This has been
right,
layers and layers and layers over the years, and now it's just collapse
yeah,
or collapsing.
yeah.
Sad to
So
say.
I wanted to get your opinion too on BRICS, on the platform of BRICS that is assembling, which I think the U.S. is going to try and disrupt at all
Oh
costs,
yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Ukrainian operations or war or whatever in
Absolutely.
Iran or. But as the BRICS meeting is conducted, which is it has to be the unifying moment. What are the things you think need to be said or put out there? What agreements? What principles or oaths or what sort of a strategic vision needs to be articulated at this meeting?
Well, there's two issues here. There's the Brooks Bank, which is pretty much a defunct because it's been run very, very badly by very incompetent people who have been trying to snuggle up to the Western central banking system. It doesn't work. There are new people in charge, and it looks like they're trying very hard to reorganize it and make it actually do its job. So that's one. The biggest issue, what I'd love to see, but it's not on the agenda. It could be a surprise. It would be a BRICS currency. Now, the biggest problem with the BRICS currency is India, for different reasons. One, India obviously still has a sore hurt over their war with China back, good Lord, how many years ago was that?
Yeah,
70 years ago?
yeah.
The 1950s, for God's sakes. Yeah, so there's that. And they are kind of blocking for different reasons, for economic reasons, but at the same time, the U.S. is pushing them to block it. They've got that motivator going behind them.
Mhm. Maybe a cryptocurrency, a BRICS cryptocurrency, like a first step, you
That
know.
could be it. And there's a thing called stable coins that are coming out now. So they're not going to grow and they're not going to fall. They're set at a certain rate and they maintain that rate exchange rate. Stable coins.
Mhm.
So that's one way of doing it. Yeah. So my boy just went in. Um, so that would be interesting. That would be very interesting to see.
Well, the other thing I think on an urgency level and a military level and a political stability level,
Mhm.
all of these nations and these leaders can suffer the fate of Imran Khan.
Of course.
So that needs to be reminded of them.
Yes.
Don't sit on your laurels. Don't think that all is going to be happy and cushy. The West is like a mad dog, always looking
Oh
for a
yeah.
way into
Yeah.
your house. So how do we approach and define genocide and the actions that we see unfolding around the world that we find disturbing? Are we disturbed by the U.S. using Ukraine as a proxy war against Russia and threatening a nuclear disaster to enslave Europe? Are we in disagreement with Israel's genocide of everybody who's not a Talmudic Zionist? If we are in disagreement with these things, how do we articulate it into a common platform that we can
Yeah,
all agree on? Such as we will do no business or have any diplomatic, or tourist relationship or any kind of whatever it
yeah,
is with these countries. Are we willing to, separate ourselves and indeed create a new promise for our children and grandchildren, or are we just all hot air and talkers?
right. And here's another thing. If you build bricks off of a resource model, I'm sorry, bricks currency off of a resource model, gold, silver, whatever. How do you trade with the EU and the US and other states that are strictly fiat currency, absolute fiat currency, especially ones that just print as much as they want, and then they're going to be what they're for some amount uh, of absolutely no back end paper money, they're going to be buying money that has gold or silver or something else at the back end. It kind of
Mhm.
becomes a problem with trade. I mean, you could go always tell the US, okay, send me 2 tons of gold for what you want, something along those lines. But what else have you got to do?
Well, here's the other thing too. Why can't they set up like a Schengen agreement? That one of the things I remember in the 1980s that made the EU feasible and attractive. It was birthed in the 1980s. I remember up until then being, from Scotland and having relatives in other countries. The only thing that really was attractive that was put out was the diplomatic. You don't need a passport to travel to any of these countries. You don't need a visa, so you can travel to Italy, to France, to Germany, to all these countries without having to get independent visas. That was the real attraction. Then they slipped in all of this Nazi Ursula von Leyen. Everyone has to define chocolate the same way, and we need to, all the economic strangulation and lobotomization that occurred.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but why not take the best lessons from that history and say, no, we're not going to approach this as a Nazification, socialism vantage point where everybody is broken down. There is no Irish anymore. There's no French anymore. We're just European. All that is bullshit. How do we perhaps create a Schengen agreement so that you can travel between Russia and North Korea? You can't live. We're not opening the doors to North Korea to have a billion, North Koreans suddenly move and encamp in Russia. I'm not saying they would, but you want to avert the possibility of things like that. You don't want, the not the scum, but like the homeless or the lower classes suddenly flooding up into Russia or elsewhere. But you do want to make it so the profitable, the economic, the intelligent, the capitalistic, the rich, the capable are able to travel between Russia and India and Brazil and China and South Africa without a passport, or a visa requirement or something, or these little things that make it irresistibly enticing. I don't know if they have all these little perks, but they need to. They need to have. If you're part of BRICS, you get a special star on your passport. You get a free rental car, whatever it is. You have to put perks into it, so the smartest and the best, are enticed to pressure their government, to be more solid on these things. And maybe you build in layers, so you have the alpha layer, the beta layer, and the Charlie layer. So you have to make different levels of benefit bricks. I think that's the only way. You can't have a one size fits all. You have to have, at this point, different gradations, not black or white. There's different grades of kind of gray. Because this is very difficult too, because you're dealing with different cultures. You're dealing with what? Brazilian, South American, Latin types. You've got Indian, you got South Africa, you got Iran, you got all these different cultures and religions. That's herding cats, in a
Oh yeah,
very
yeah,
way that's never done before.
yeah. The one of the good things for the EU in this case is that they're all basically vassals of the US. So no, nobody will go too far. Scott, we are way out of time. It's
All
about to
right, brother. God
cut
bless you.
off
It
on
was
us
great meeting
again.
with you.
Thank you, thank you. We will have you back on, and waiting for you to come to Russia.
I look forward to it. Go to our website if you have any questions, destroy-cancer.com. Also
Mhm.
greatawakeningstv.com. And let's do it soon,
Yep,
Stanislav. Always great to be with you, brother.
yep. Cheers.
Take care.